Welcome to Strictly Creative. My name is Garmamie, and our guest this time is a comic and a comedian. Hello, Aaron Hill. How you doing?
Comic and a comedian. You heard it here first. I'm doing great, Garmamie. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Uh,
Awesome.
First question I have for you, sir, is from your point of view and experience, what's the role of a comedian and the role of comedy?
Yeah. Uh, Geez, I gotta say, that's an awesome question. Getting deep right off the bat, I always think that comedy is awesome. I like it because it exposes you to different perspectives, right? I really think there's a lot that can be funny about having a perspective that you haven't heard before or that you've never sort of seen the world through someone else's eyes, and there's always a lot of humor there, right? It always brings up a lot of the assumptions that we have and a lot of things we take for granted. So yeah, man, I think a huge role is just sort of sharing different perspectives, as well as just obviously just providing some levity to this crazy bananas on fire world that we're living in. And in a personal sense too, I always feel that when I can laugh at the world or my circumstances or myself, that it kind of creates some agency, right? Yeah, I don't feel as trapped. I don't feel as bogged down by my problems. If you can laugh, you have a little bit of freedom, right? So
Interesting. Now, as far as and I agree. I think laughter and just laughing at a situation is certainly, I think most people would agree, is the healthy thing to do. Why do people attend comedy shows or consume content that's comedic, be it jokes, shows, novels, and so on? I think you've kind of answered it previously, but why is it you think people, I guess in this day and age, virtually attend a comedy show, but
yeah.
previous to COVID, why did people show up and consume comedy?
Well, the live experience is really something. I know probably when you ask 10 comedians, they'll all try to push you to get out and see a live show, but there's a reason. There's a reason for that. They're not just trying to sell tickets. There really is something special that happens in a live show. There's an atmosphere and a feeling that you can't recreate on an album or on a video. Even when you watch like specials on Netflix and stuff, by the time it hits that level, it's been so edited. A lot of the times, they're doing jokes two, three, four times. They're doing multiple takes of them to get just the right cadence, or maybe they flubbed a word here or there. But live, you just get the whole package, right? You get mistakes and all. You might get like some spontaneous unexpected reactions from the crowd. Maybe a waitress drops a plate of dishes and they got to respond to that in real time. So, you know, comedy is always great to consume, but I really got to just go ahead and push the live experience, and that's tough nowadays. Obviously, we understand that with COVID. Our clubs here in Ottawa, Absolute and Yuck Yucks, are doing an awesome job just following protocol and really sanitizing everything, going above and beyond. But I understand there's going to be reservations for sure. It's a kooky time. The numbers are going up, but when you can, folks, get out to a live show because it's really something special. And when you see something live, there's always going to be some kind of unique aspect to it that'll make it special. It's not just like a track that you play on your iPod, right? It's a unique experience that you won't forget. So, yeah.
What's the community like in Ottawa as far as comedy, and what's the last 14 months been like for comedians?
The community is awesome. I started about 7 years ago, 7 or 8, I forget. Anyway, I've seen it grow. When I started, there was like one open mic in the city beyond the clubs, and now, there's a thriving independent scene. You could do 3, 4 shows a week, just at independent shows or open mics if you want to. So it's really come a long way. The community's grown. There's a lot going on, and Ottawa has a pretty awesome history of comedy too. A lot of people don't know this, but like we produce talent like Norm Macdonald. One of the best comedians of all time has come out of here. Jeremy Hotz, Tom Green. just so many like high level world class comedians have come out of here. Graham K more recently, Kyle Brownrigg. I mean, these are all people who just like, you know, what do they cut their teeth here in Ottawa. So like I feel like people don't know that sometimes. I kind of want to like, I have this goal that I want to like commission someone to make a huge mural to put on the side of a building with like all the famous comedians, all the killers that have come out of Ottawa, because we really do have something special. I don't know if it's something in the water or we just got to make up for that boring ass bureaucratic culture this city is known for. But man, this city has a rich history in stand-up comedy. And, you know, we should be really proud of that. Yeah, over the last 14 months, it's been tough. Obviously, there's been some online stuff going on. Those are different. I've only done a couple. I like them just because you can, you know, you can do them at your kitchen table and then go to bed right after, you know what I mean? There's no commute. There's no worry about getting too drunk or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just a little bit more convenient. And I've had great feedback from audience members too. So like, I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea. You don't quite get the same experience as a bunch of people in a room, but we're doing the best we can. You know, there's a lot of people have pivoted, you know, myself and a couple other comedians I know really, you know, we've sort of ventured over into like musical comedy for the duration of the pandemic. You know, some people are doing like sketch or like online talk shows, stuff like that, a lot of podcasts. So I think it's just like creative people just need to create. And if we can't have stand-up comedy right now, we're going to do other things until we're back in the clubs.
How, just a two-part follow-up question to that. How's you're talking about music and comedy, that sort of merger, how's that experience been? And if we can just go back to you mentioned Ottawa, and Ottawans don't know much about, or don't realize, as you mentioned, that this city's produced a lot of talent. Why is it that, in your opinion, why is it that people in this region maybe aren't aware of that?
Yeah. Oh, I have such a one-track mind. What was the first part to the question again?
Just the first part was you talked
musical
about
comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love it. I've always loved musical. The first album I ever bought was Weird Al Yankovic, Off the Deep End, and it's had a profound influence on me, evidently.
Wow.
I've always loved
it.
I mean,
that's the first album you ever bought?
First album ever. I bought that, and then it was Hole, Live Through This, Courtney Love. So
that's one extreme to, wow, that's geez, man.
It describes my personality so well. No, yeah. So I mean, I've always loved musical comedy, and you know, especially in you know, Tenacious D is just one of my favorite bands of all time, and I aspire to be as funny as they are. And I love trying. So I've actually been able to release some songs during the pandemic, which is so cool, because in a weird way it was so hard to go without stand-up, but in another way it's like, wow, now I have all this time, I can pursue this thing that I've kind of always wanted to do and never really got the ball rolling on. So I mean, I love it. I think it's something I'm going to continue even when we do have stand-up back. And of course, you know, it's kind of, there is some crossover too. Like Howard, the manager of Yuck Yucks here, actually gave my brother and I our own musical comedy show at Yuck Yucks. So I mean, we have this sort of stage now where we can perform these live, you know, when stages are kind of back up and running. So yeah, it's actually really exciting to see where those go. Like, we've had a few shows here in Ottawa, and not just our show, but just other musical comedy shows. They've always had such a great response, and there's so much talent here, so much musical comedy talent. It's always just the roof gets blown off the place. Everybody just has such a great time. And again, that's something that I feel like hasn't really been realized fully in this city, but man, we're going to try, because there's a ton of talent and there's a ton of demand for it. So I don't know, man, watch out for a musical comedy show coming your way soon. Yeah. Second part of the question. I think we overlook the fact that a lot of great comedy comes out of Ottawa, because unfortunately it doesn't always stay in Ottawa.
Mm.
You know, it's kind of part of a bigger picture where Canada just doesn't have the star system that America has. And it's also more geographically spread out. So it's tougher to kind of make a living on the road touring, you know, whereas in America, you know, there's so many cities in a short geographical area that you can really, you know, pay your bills touring, doing comedy, which is pretty awesome. It's a tough, it's kind of possible in Canada, but it's a lot tougher. So a lot of comedians just end up either going to America when they get good enough, or just going to like a larger market like a Toronto, maybe a Vancouver, which kind of puts them on that Los Angeles circuit, the West Coast circuit. So New York City, right? Yeah, unfortunately, Ottawa produces a lot of talent. It doesn't always hold a lot of talent. So it's kind of unfortunate. I'd like to change that. I'd like to kind of, that's kind of what I was talking about. Like I do want to raise awareness about how talented people are here, so that maybe we could just build something that's sustainable in itself. Maybe we can start to support people, and then we wouldn't have that you know, the flight out of here when you reach a certain talent level, right? But you know, it's obviously a long road to that. But
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because what you're speaking about, I think, also applies to other forms of you know, creative expression. You know, from possibly music and even acting, stage acting, and a slew of other sort of artistic milieus and expressions. But I want to go back to what you mentioned before. You said you've been doing comedy for 7 years now. What got you into comedy? Well, what's the
yeah,
story
man.
behind that?
Yeah, I always loved it. I, you know, really since I mean, high school, I really started to really love comedy in a big way. Uh, Chris Rock, "Bring the Pain" was an album that was played many times in my circle of friends, and we were always quoting the jokes and stuff like that. And it really had a big impact on me. I didn't really realize at the time, but it really kind of informed a lot of the ways I started to think about the world and stuff. And I'd always kind of identified with comedians when I'd see them on television and stuff, and just the way, you know, they always just bring a unique angle to the table. Like they just look at things from a different view, and I'd always kind of just like felt like I could identify with that. But you know, I grew up in Northern Ontario. There weren't any comedy clubs and stuff like that. And then when I eventually moved out, I just didn't even like realize that it was a thing that I could just go do. Like it kind of happened by happenstance that someone we knew in our hometown worked at the Yuck Yucks bar, and we were just going out one night for beers, and we stopped in to pick him up, and we caught the end of somebody's set, and I remember just walking in there like, oh shit, like this is real, man. Like this is awesome. There's just a live human. It's not a television. It's a live human just entertaining, you know, 200 people with just words. Like this is wild. Anyway, long story short, I never really got around to it until I got a head injury. And basically I suffered a concussion on the job. Was subsequently out of the workforce for about a year, a little more than a year, and it was pretty debilitating. I couldn't really like exercise too hard. Reading was really problematic for me. You know, I couldn't like watch a lot of you know, bright screens or listen to a lot of sound, and I just thought, hell, man, like there's nothing else I could do. Like I'm just gonna give this a shot. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just like listen to as much stand up I can on the internet and just like study it, try to figure it out. I'm gonna come up with a set, and I'm just gonna go for it. And I did, and I had performed on Yuck Yuck's New Talent Showcase. And at that time, like I was still so concussed that like the spotlight was just, it was just blinding. The sound was overwhelming. I was like completely out of my element, but I had my 6 minutes so well memorized. I just went up there and just kind of like hit all the points, and it went well enough that I was like, yeah, I'm doing this, you know. And then I got the hell out because the noise was bothering me, and yeah, man, I've been at it ever since.
If we could just go back to what you said, the first time you went to a comedy show, you went to pick up a friend who was working there. When you walked into that space, what what was the room like? Well, what sort of energy did you feel in that space?
Yeah, well, I mean, the performer had attention of the audience for sure. It was kind of like his last 10 minutes of his set, and he was the headliner. So, I mean, this is arguably the best performer of the night, doing arguably his best jokes of the night. So, I mean, it was really like they were kind of hanging on his every word. And I remember him just talking about stuff like just trying to talk to girls in university, and it just being like so boring, and he's just like trying to stay awake. He's like, oh, your major was in psychology. Oh, yeah. And I just like remember identifying just so hard. And I'm just like, man, this is like, I need to come back. I need to see more of this. I need to one day do this. Right. So, yeah.
And when you did that, when you eventually went on stage for your 6 minutes, prior to going up on stage, what were some of the thoughts that were running through your mind, or the emotions as well?
Yeah. I was terrified, but I was also very prepared. I mean, I had, I knew enough to prepare. It's funny because I went there that night. I was the first one in the room beyond the staff. Second person in the room came up, hung out beside me at the bar. We started chatting. I realized it was his first time also. And we started talking, and then he was like, so like, you ready? You ready? Yeah, yeah, I'm ready. And he's like, well, I got like 3 minutes. I figure I'm just gonna wing the rest. I'll be good. I'll be good. Like,
Wow.
and in my head, I'm going right on. So turns out he went up right before me, and he went up and kind of got some spatters of laughter, and then he hit like the 2.5 minute mark, and he's like, well, see you later. And I was just like, oh my God, exactly. This is exactly why I prepared. So I ended up going on, 4 minutes sooner than I was supposed to. But yeah, it worked out well for me, not so much for him. But yeah, I mean, it's scary, man. It's scary. But I had kind of gone and like done some like recon mission. I'd gone to a few open mics just to sort of, it's funny because you go to open mics and it's like, it's kind of mean, but it's kind of true. You listen to who's up on stage and you're like, I'm funnier than that guy, or that guy sucks, or this guy is a hack, or whatever it is, but that's kind of what it takes to get the confidence sometimes to get up there yourself. And then you get up there and you realize like, oh, well, it's really not easy, and it's easy to criticize and all that. But, that's just how it starts. And then, yeah.
If you could go back and watch, did you record that your first ever performance, like audio or video?
Not the first one, because I don't know if I could have done. I think that would have put my nerves over the edge. I was just like, it's just enough for me to get in there and do it, and then I'll worry about all that recording stuff later. Yeah.
Because you've been doing this for 7 years, the reason why I'm going to ask is over the last 7 years, I'm sure your approach and your style of comedy has evolved and refined yourself. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And if you could go back from what you recall, what aspect of that performance, your first ever performance, what aspect, if any, have remained consistent, or is there still a bit of you from back in what's 2020 minus 7? I'm horrible at math.
Yeah.
2021. Sorry. Boom.
Yeah. 2014.
2014.
February 2014. That was my first set.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of the sensibilities are the same. So the kind of, I guess the spirit of it, I think, was about the same, if you want to say it that way. I actually still have one joke from that set that I will occasionally still do. So, it wasn't all terrible. Yeah, the writing's gotten a lot better, but yeah, the general just like, yeah, I guess spirit of it would probably be about the same, I would say. I haven't really because, I'm just trying to, it's just an extension of your personality in a way, right? So, I mean, that's kind of still the same. And yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting because you mentioned preparation, right? You mentioned you prepared. Obviously, you prepared to fulfill that 6 minute quota, and you did some recon. So you did some of that research. and to understand the process and just to get the vibe. How important is preparation for you even today?
Yeah, to me, it's maybe the most important thing. And I don't think everybody has to be that way. I think some comedians thrive. They can go up on stage with just a very loose idea and kind of work it out as they talk. I'm not one of those people. I like to work it out well in advance. For one, I still like my memory is just not that good. I don't know if it's like related to the concussion or what, but like I have to have it pretty firmly embedded in my head to be able to remember it while I'm on stage, especially if something starts to go wonky. Like it's easy to deliver your jokes or your material when everything's perfect. But let's say there's someone chatty in the front row, or let's say the waitress is taking an order right by the front row and it's like really loud and distracting, or whatever it is. Let's say some guy's drunk in the back and he won't shut up. Like these are all things you have to consider, and so that can easily throw you off your game. And so that's why I really even if I'm just going to an open mic and just throwing around some ideas, I like to be really well prepared, because the other thing is that in Ottawa, it's not New York, it's not Toronto. Stage time still is pretty precious around here. So for me to be able to get booked on a show, I want to make the most use out of that time as possible, which to me means knowing exactly what I want to work on, exactly what I want to deliver, and recording it always, and then coming back, analyzing it, breaking it down, trying to make it better. Right. I'm just trying to maximize the amount of productivity with each time I'm on stage, because we really can't afford not to in this town. I mean, again, the scene is getting better, but the reality is, like, if you live in Toronto, you live in New York, you can go up twice, maybe 3 times a night. Like those reps are so important. And if you're doing that, then you can afford to just maybe go up with some weird concept that you thought of 15 minutes ago and just like work it out. But for me personally, yeah, I always try to prepare and just to make the most out of my time on stage. Yeah.
I guess it speaks to your professionalism as a comic. Wouldn't it be fair to say that you take every minute and every second on stage as a very seriously, and you prepare? And I think that there's some crossover to other creative ventures or creative art forms where preparation and practice is fundamental. How much time would you say you spend rehearsing and practicing?
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of sad, because I think when you're drawn to a creative endeavor, you don't see that side of it, right? You just see the performance or whatever it is, and you're just like, oh my God, and then you realize, you start to get into it and you're like, oh, this is a lot of work, right? So yeah, I mean, I'll definitely it depends on the show, right? Like if I'm doing an open mic, then I'll definitely just like go over my notes the day of and try to at least say them out loud one time, right? If I've got like a really important showcase set, well, then maybe I'm like rehearsing it 2 or 3 times throughout the day, maybe even starting like 2 days out, getting one rep in the second. Like I said, my memory is not great, so I do find the repetitions are helpful for me. But yeah, I mean, there's rarely a time I go on stage where I haven't put like, at least one rep like this is me standing in my living room, whatever. And I'm visualizing an audience. Like to me, in my mind, it's the real deal. So that when I go up, like, it's like I've already done this. Right. But that's my process. And again, it's just me. Like a lot of people are able to, I wish I was a little bit more free sometimes and loosey goosey. But again, I just find that like, yeah, we've only got so much stage time. I want to make the most of it. And that's just the way I approach it.
Speaking of process, what is your creative process in writing and drafting jokes?
Yeah, well, I try to write about 5 times a week, maybe six, even if it's just for like 10 minutes. I'll literally set a timer for 10 minutes and just go over any like unfinished ideas I've had. I'll try to really flesh them out. If I'm totally drawing blanks, there's a couple exercises I do. Sometimes I'll just look at like a random noun generator online, right? Just get random words and just try to come up with topics based on that. Sometimes I do like, I'll look up like homonyms and homophones for all the grammar nerds out there. And then just like try to write like these short little quips based on each meaning of the word. It's just to kind of get your brain trained in like thinking about words in multiple ways, right? So there's different things. I just try to do something for 10 minutes, 5, 6 times a week. And then of course, usually what happens is I'll get on a roll and then I'll just continue for, however long it may take me just till I finish the thought, right? So but it's just good to stay in the habit, I find. It just keeps it easier. And just like performing, like when you're doing it constantly, it's just those synapses get firing and you can just kind of stay hot. It's the tough part of the pandemic. Sets are so few and far between that it's like you're rusty every time you go up, and it's just painful sometimes, but it just is what it is, right?
What's the community locally or online beyond Ottawa? What are they doing, I guess, comics to kind of foster that competitive and yet collaborative spirit? How are comics keeping each other still on point with their comedy beyond the virtual performance?
Yeah.
You guys do more outside of that? Like collaboratively?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I'm involved in I do a weekly workshop. So like Tuesday nights, I had it tonight, and we'll just do, an hour and a half. Everyone will just bring ideas to the table and we'll all just give each other feedback or any ideas that come to mind, stuff like that. So, that helps. That helps just keep you in comedy mode.
Is everyone?
But yeah, apart from that, I mean.
Sorry to interrupt. Is everyone a comic that's part of this workshop?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So, but I think I really see a lot of people just kind of like pivoting to other stuff. A lot of people are producing sketches. A lot of people are doing like just like little video stuff, TikToks, stuff like that. A lot of people are releasing albums that maybe they recorded like a while ago and they weren't sure if they were going to release. They just kind of had it in the can and then like, oh, pandemic, perfect timing, Yeah, it's a weird time. I mean, everyone's just kind of gone off and doing their own ways, but all trying to stay creative and productive as best we can.
What would you say in terms of performance? What's your approach to delivery and in that performance? How would you describe Aaron Hill, the comic, in terms of his style?
Yeah, I like to think that the writing and the jokes are kind of my driving force. Like some people are really high energy. They'll come out and really, it's almost like cheerleading. Some people tend to work with the crowd a lot. They'll ask questions, they'll respond in real time, right? I'm a writer. I'm a joke guy. I like the jokes. I like to kind of let the jokes speak for themselves. So I'm not going to kill you with energy, but I try to be engaging. I try to keep it interesting and compelling. I try to talk about things that are at least somewhat relevant to my life so that it just doesn't sound like I'm phoning it in. Like I have to have some kind of emotional connection to what I'm talking about for the most part, right? So yeah, that's just it. But I mean, I like the jokes. I just love the idea. It still blows me away that you could just like put words together in a certain sequence and then that will somehow elicit laughter from other people. I'm just fascinated by that concept and I just keep trying to get better at it,
So would you say in your case, is content more significant than the delivery in terms of energy and the, the showmanship, if you can call it? Is that more valuable?
It's a tough one. I think personally that delivery and content, they're kind of symbiotic and they kind of feed off each other, right? I mean, the reality is,
but I asked this, Aaron, because you've seen a lot of comics. You yourself have been on stage many times. So over the years, like I'm sure you have a certain a better understanding than someone who just attends a show, you know what I mean? Because you've been on stage and you consume comedy as well and you produce it. So it's probably not a fair question, but is the delivery, if you were to say, is the content slightly more important than the delivery, or is there a balance there? What's the formula if you can formulate one?
Yeah, I think everybody's got their own little ratios and all that.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way I look at it is if you kind of lean too heavy in any one area, then you might have a little bit of success with it, but the longevity, you got to be a little bit balanced with it, right? Some people are just high energy, but their jokes aren't great. So like it'll work, say, I don't know, 4 times out of 7. But then those other 3 times when the audience doesn't care about energy, well, you're kind of painting yourself into a corner there, right? Or vice versa. So, but what I've sort of learned is that like the more comfortable I am on stage, the easier it is for me to like write better jokes somehow. So like performance kind of enhances content in a way. Like if you're really nervous on stage and you're like newer in your first year or two, those nerves, like they play a real factor, and they're going to influence the way you speak, the way you deliver, but also the way you write and what you're comfortable just talking about, right? Like yeah. So anyway, for me personally, I've been able to go sort of deeper in my content as my performance has gotten more comfortable, which only comes with reps. So I really do think they're kind of symbiotic in that sense, right? And then of course, when your content is good and it's working, you can feel a lot more freer to perform it any way you want, right? You have a little bit more leeway there. So again, I think just one kind of plays off the other, and vice versa.
So you've been putting in a lot of reps. You spend time practicing and writing at home. At least I think you mentioned 5 days a week or something to that effect. You've been doing this for 7 years. How has your as a comedian, how has your passion for comedy and as a performer, how has that changed how you consume comedy? Do you have a very critical eye or ear when you listen to, say, something on a streaming platform or even at a live show? Can you turn that critic off and just enjoy it for what it is, or is it always on?
No, it's always on, and I think most people suck. I just can't turn it off. That's just how I
Wow.
think.
Wow.
It's true, man. It's true. I can't shut it off. I have to be like, that being said, I mean, it's not like we're seeing like New York City killers on a nightly basis, but I'm always critical of it. For me to like just enjoy and laugh out loud, it has to be someone like so far out of my level that like I can't see the tricks anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not super common that happens anymore. I'm not saying whatever, but I'm just saying that like, yeah, for me to just sit down and enjoy comedy doesn't really happen that often. I can usually kind of get a sense of a person's style and sort of figure out what their formulas are and stuff like that. So, and I hate to sound super sadistic, but comics are kind of like that. I mean, we get a lot of enjoyment from watching people who aren't good also. So like it's fun to, especially when they're your friends and they're not doing well. It can be really enjoyable as a comic because you know what it feels like. You've been there. You've been bombing in front of a lot of people. You know how painful it is. You know how much it sucks. So when your buddy's up there doing it, you know exactly what it's like, and you can't help but laugh in his face. Yeah.
Fair enough. In terms of bombing, can you explain to us what that means? And I have a follow-up after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the term does get thrown around a lot. I think personally it's when you just don't do anything good with your entire set. To me, that's a bomb. Like to me, even if you go do, say, 10 minutes and, 7 of it is like mediocre, but then the last 3 good, you didn't bomb. That's not a bomb. Bombing to me is when you just like, they're having none of it. And anything you do, like you could tell jokes that have worked 12 times out of 13. That's a weird ratio. But and then in this one instance, they're just not buying for whatever reason. Maybe you're just like, it's not the town for you, it's not the neighborhood for you, whatever it is. They think you look weird, whatever it is, they're just not having it. And it just feels like drowning, and you can't dig yourself out. So to put it in fighting terms, you bite down on your mouth guard and you plow ahead and you get through it, and you live to fight another day.
Have you ever seen, or you yourself experienced, a scenario on stage, or as someone who's watching a performer, a situation where the individual, let's say, was pretty much he or she was on their way to completely bombing, but found something to either dig themselves out of that hole or swim to shore? Like, have you ever seen that happen? And if so, are there particular tactics that people add to their skit as a, like, okay, I'm about to bomb, let's hit that exit button or something? Is that a common trait or procedure?
Yeah, you bet. I've seen that a lot. I've done that a lot. It really is one of those things where you can always turn it around. It just becomes very hard when you get in your own head, and like if you tell 3-4 jokes that don't work in a row, it's really tough to regain your composure. But you can do it. You can always do it. And one trick that a lot of people do is just to address the fact that they're bombing. Oftentimes that will just sort of break the tension. That lets the audience know that you're self-aware enough to realize that you're not doing good. Oftentimes that's enough to elicit a laugh and start to turn things around and get it going in the right direction. Sometimes people use that too much. Maybe when, it can be like anything. Like if you start to use it too much, it can become a crutch, right? But that's one tactic that you do see a lot, but it also works. So,
in theory, is the crowd, like, are they part of the performance, or are they just the judges? In other words, and just to wrap up on this bombing topic, because it seems like so much is vested on how the audience, and I guess it's the same for anything else, like a live musical performance, and so on. A lot of it is vested on how they respond, whether they clap or, in this case, laugh. Like, are they the judges? Are they the collaborators? Are they the in-between? Like, how do you perceive the audience?
Yeah, it's a great question. At the end of the day, they're the ones buying tickets. So yeah, they hold all the power, basically. That being said, it's not like, you should never sort of accept abuse from audience members, which can happen as well. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's like anything. I think you can blame the audience if you don't do that well, but at the end of the day, you'll go farther if you always try to not cater to them, but like, you got to have, I have the mentality that the audience is always right, even when they're wrong, because that's going to take me further. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes audiences are just shitty. Like, there's nothing you do. Like, they just, whatever reason, sometimes they don't all come together at the beginning of a show as a cohesive unit. And so they don't work well throughout the show. It's just like different. It's very disparate. And, it can affect the entire dynamic of a whole show, right? It's really important to start things off strong, and that usually carries through. But sometimes audiences just don't come together, and in that sense, you don't want to let an audience like that. You don't want to write off your material because an audience like that didn't respond to it. But at the same time, you do want to be a professional and have the tools in your belt to be able to turn around in those situations, because it does happen fairly commonly. So yeah, it's just one of those things where the audience can be bad, but at the end of the day, you gotta act like they're always right, because at the end of the day, they're paying for tickets. They're the ones that make it all happen, you know. And if you've ever tried to do stand-up comedy to two people, four people, whatever, you understand like how important it is. So they really are part of a performance in a way. You know, laughter is contagious, right? I mean, if you have just four people, six people, it's not going to be the same show as if you have 50, as if you have 100 or 200. So yeah, I mean, audience does actually hold a lot of weight to a performance for sure.
How open, from what you've seen, or in your case, yourself personally, how open are comics to feedback from audience members after a show? Is that even?
It's awful. They should never give feedback. They can give feedback by not buying a ticket, but shut the hell up with your advice. You don't know anything. If you want to learn, go to an open mic. Yeah, they stink. I've had people that have never performed anything in their entire life say like, "Oh, well, this was pretty good, but you should shut up. Shut up. If you want to do comedy, go do it. Leave mine to me. I'm gonna go home and listen to it. I'm good." You know what I mean?
That's interesting, because I've seen it seems like it's a very, the performance aspect is very real, as it is for any art form, but it's real in the sense where people know, it seems like the performer knows rather quickly whether or not people are buying the create, the comedic narrative that's being written, and it's obviously an extremely tough art form. But I guess the question, I'm going to ask you this question. I know you've answered it, but I want to see what else we can explore. What are some of the challenges as a comic, and the performer, and the not the sorry, let me rephrase that. Like the performer, challenges as a performer, but outside of performance, what are some of the challenges in this sort of creative art form?
Yeah. Well, like as a performer, I'd say challenges are just again like you're always it's almost like you're never doing the same show, because there's always a new audience, there's always different performers to perform with, which will affect how shows go over. Um so constantly changing environment. I've seen, I used to work the door at Absolute Comedy. We do two shows on Saturday, two shows on Friday, same lineup, same jokes, word for word, kill on the early show, bomb on the late show. It just, sometimes you just can't explain it. Like I said, sometimes the crowd's just weird. Sometimes they've been drinking since 2 p.m. and they're just too out of it by the time the late show rolls around. Sometimes it's just a different demographic. They're old enough. They're too old to get the jokes. They're too young, whatever it is, right? So that constantly changing environment, but you got to find that balance between what's true to you, but what's accessible to the most amount of people, right? So that's one of the big challenges. Like we all have things that are funny in our lives, but to be able to translate that in a way that will play to a large demographic of people, that's where I think the challenge comes, right? And that's where, just skill and experience really will take it, it's the only way to get there, right? Just as a stepping back as a performer, like the challenges we face here in Canada are obviously, like I did touch on. I mean, it's tough to make a living exclusively off stand up here. There are some revenue streams and stuff like that, but it's not like the States, right? Like we don't have that star system. We don't have the sheer number of markets to play to. So the reality is in Canada, even though we have like this tremendous amount of talent that comes out of here, if you're going to stay here, you're probably going to have some kind of day job, or some other whatever, irons in the fire in whatever way that you can have those, whether it's acting, you can do like adjacent stuff, acting, if you got a podcast, whatever.
Writing.
Um,
As well.
yeah.
Writing.
Writing, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think, yeah, like in terms of like, if you want to be a comedian in Canada, you got to be prepared to be something other than just a comedian, which is, yeah, probably one of the biggest challenges I think we face here. Yeah.
How do you read an audience? Do you read an audience before a show? Because you mentioned that example of performing, on the same day, performing at one time and captivating the audience, getting them to laugh, and then performing later on that night at a separate show, and not being successful in that. How much reading of an audience do you do now generally? Like, do you target and profile your audience just to understand what some of the considerations might need to be in your comedy?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can kind of overdo it sometimes too. Like sometimes I'll stand by the door at the club and I'll watch all the people that come in just to get a sense of where they're at and who they are. But that can freak you out too, because then you think that you can just like freak yourself out with too much information. Sometimes it's better if you don't know who you're playing to and you just go by like the reactions to, I mean, you're always going to have like a host for a show. So oftentimes you can kind of gauge based on how they respond to the host, right? If they're hot right off the bat, or if they're laughing at a certain type of humor, maybe they're more into dirty stuff or like blue humor, or maybe like they're a little bit more, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, progressive or woke, or like, there are some factors that play into it. Some markets are just more into some humor, like Kingston, for example. You play Kingston, they like blue humor, right? They want to hear about shit and farts and whatever. You go to Centertown, Ottawa, sometimes that'll work, sometimes not. Sometimes it can be a little bit uptight. So it definitely helps to think about like sort of the geography of where you're at, and and then just kind of gauging by how they're responding to other performers, especially when you know the other performers and you know their act and you know how it typically goes over, right? That becomes a pretty good barometer, if you will.
Speaking of you mentioned the host. What is the role of a host, and can they essentially? Two-part question. What's the role of a host? And have you seen a host carry the show ever? Like carry as in outperform all the performers?
Yes, absolutely. Role of a host, I think, is to get the audience working as a unit, right? That's really important. So part of that's just breaking the ice, maybe talking to a few people, and also just sort of getting them prepared to hear some jokes. So that means, hosting is a difficult, not necessarily difficult, but taken for granted job sometimes to do it well, right? You kind of are the backbone of the show, and suppose someone goes out and just destroys, it is kind of your responsibility to sort of reel it in a little bit before the next performer comes up. Otherwise they're going to get buried, right? Like, so it's about sort of controlling, I guess, the momentum of the show in a certain sense. You're kind of like, I've heard one comedian say you kind of got to be like a Jedi with it. You're kind of controlling energy in a certain sense, right? So there's a lot to hosting, and there's a lot to doing it well. I've absolutely seen hosts carry the show and bury headliners like in a club setting, and it's been like, I'm surprised people didn't walk out. It just happens sometimes. It is kind of part of the game too, right? Like if you're doing like a middle spot at a club, which is like the spot about 20 minutes right before the headliner, I mean, to get to the point where you're a headliner, what you want to do is try to bury the headliner. Like you want to do so well that they can't follow you, because that's how you're going to move up the ranks. And so there is that kind of competitive spirit too. And it's kind of part of it, but sometimes it can get, if it's a big mismatch, it can be kind of ugly. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very competitive. It's on bordering on a combat sport with words. What if you were to give us three keywords, characteristics, in your opinion, that define a good overall a good comic, what would those three keywords be?
Um, I think being unique is really important. There's first of all, like so many comedians now. And especially with like online content, a lot of the, like for example, Donald Trump or COVID, like we've all heard the jokes. It's There's 8 million people out there writing jokes about COVID or Trump when he was in office. And it's just like, I like people who can kind of step around that lower hanging fruit, right? Or just find a super original take on it, right? So I think really being unique and original is such an important part of it. I think it goes so much further than even performance or energy. I just think like really having a unique voice is like one of the most important things. Um, Presence goes a long way, right? Like, and whatever that means to you as a performer, it could just be like commanding a room full of people. It could be maybe you have a really diverse range of skills, so you'll incorporate like singing into your act, or you'll incorporate like impressions or voices or act outs. I mean, there's a lot of tools that you can potentially use. I tend to not use a lot of them, but whatever way you can make your presence known and really felt in a room is going to help you at the end of the day. And that's two, and I can't really think of a third one, but I think those two, if you have, you're good to go.
Excellent points. What are some of the most misunderstood as a comedian? What's the most misunderstood aspect of your art form and the craft for people who probably never step on a stage or in any capacity, or comedic capacity, if that's even a word or expression. But like, what are some of the most misunderstood things that you think people, spectators at a comedy show or consumers of content should know?
Um, well, what they should know, I'm not sure. Like, I don't want to lift the curtain and then reveal everything. But what I would think that most people don't realize is just like how bad you are when you start, how long it takes to get good. Like it's a long haul, man. It's a war of attrition. You gotta bring jokes to the stage. You gotta do them over and over and hone them and refine them and get them good, and then like start to string them together and build topics and build a set, and then like and then you got to round out all your other skills, like I was saying, your crowd work, your press. Like there's a whole range of tools that you can use, but it takes a lot of work, man. It's hard because I don't think people are drawn to this lifestyle because they want to work hard. I think they be comedians because they want to be lazy. They want to sleep till noon and they want to party all night, whatever it is, right? And whatever, that's part of it too. It's all valid, but the reality is, if you want to progress and you want to really move forward, you got to it's a grind. You got to put in the time. You got to put in the work. Um, some people have some kind of meteoric rises, and that's cool too. Some of them don't last. Some of them do. But for the most part, you know what I mean? If you want to have longevity, or like, by the way, I'm nobody. Like, I shouldn't be talking about anything. Um, uh, but
you're obviously somebody. You're a comic. You're a performer. You've been on stage here and in other cities. So I wouldn't say you're a nobody. But
yeah.
I know what you're trying to say. But at the same time, it's like you put in 7 years into this art form and investment. Into this creative, very very tough creative art form. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to ask you, how has that time in that you've put in, because you mentioned it's a war of attrition, how has that investment, and if I can use the word journey, how has that journey shaped your perspective of the world around you, or people in terms of interpersonal dynamics? How has comedy changed you? Has it changed you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think one of the best ways it's changed me is that I don't care if people are right as much anymore, or if I'm right. Um, I think it's so easy to argue about whatever it is, right? Whether you're arguing about Democrats, Republicans, or pro-life, pro-choice, whatever it is, like you can argue till you're blue in the face. Um, it doesn't interest me. I want to do something where I'm challenged. I want to create something. I want to learn something. That's where I want to spend my time focusing. It's so much more of a rich experience. I could spend all my time trying to figure out all the ways that I could be right with all the things that I care about, but I don't care anymore. I just want to go learn and entertain and grow and be funny. Like that's all I can. So it's like, to me, it's like, if I see like a couple of people and they're having like some epic battle, I'm like, yeah, who cares? Can you write a joke? I don't care. Go create something, go learn, go be vulnerable in some way, put yourself out there. That's what has value to me now. And I'm unabashed about it. And I think this has been such a positive direction for my life to go in. Like, I don't, yeah, I don't care if you can argue all day. Have fun
Well,
with that.
that I love that, man. That's incredible. That's very healthy. It's positive, and it's because people can get caught up in so much this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, having that ability, in your case, to make comedy, to make laughter, to create content is more valuable than getting caught up in some headache or what have you. Tell us, what's your favorite moment as a performer, as a comedian? What's that favorite epic moment for you that you think back to sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just put one little tag on the last point there, um, I think the mark of a great joke is when you can disagree with the point it's making and still laugh. To me, that is the mark of a great joke. You know what I mean? Like there's this one comic in Ottawa, Matt Carter, fantastic comedian. He's got this joke about how standard drivers are just the worst, right? Like, because all they do is talk about how standard is so much better than automatic, and you have so much more control and this and that. But he's like, it's the stupidest thing ever. Why would you want to do more work to drive your car? It's the dumbest. Like, you can relax with automatic, you know what I mean? You never grind the gears, you never wear out your clutch, yada yada. And I died when I heard that. I laughed, but I don't agree. Like, I'm a standard guy. I drive a standard. I'm pro standard. But he made me laugh. So he presented his point of view in such a way that the funny outshone whether it doesn't matter who's right or wrong anymore. It's like, you made it so clear where you stand that I laughed, even though I disagree with you. Like, that's what impresses me, right? So just to kind of wrap up that last point there. Yeah, man, my favorite, I know it's weird, but like in a performative sense, my favorite thing is when I get a real like unexpected involuntary response from an audience member. So what I mean by that is like sometimes I can be a little bit understated in my style. And so sometimes there can be a little bit of a delay between what I say and like when people catch on or this or that. And so like occasionally I'll just like tell a joke and like move on, and there'll be like one person who just gets it like a lot later than everybody else. So everybody else is done laughing, and then you'll just hear a snort or something. And it's like, because at that point, when one person snorts in a room full of people, then all hell breaks loose, right? All bets are off. Now we're just in wacky land. Anything goes. You don't have to feel inhibited. You don't have to feel self-conscious. now we're just all getting crazy together. And so that's like, that's my favorite part as a performer, is when you get that like one lone snorter. Yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. And I have another question for you. Tell us a story, if you don't mind, in regards to your favorite performance ever, or favorite joke, or particular scenario that you'll never forget as a comic. Is there one? Sorry, I know it's a tough one to ask, but is there one in particular that jumps out at you, or?
You know, not really. I'll tell you a weird story just because like it's kind of embarrassing, but my mom came to see me at a show one time, and she laughs really loud. And I know that sounds like whatever, but like, I mean, like she's gotten like kicked out of restaurants. Like she's
Wow.
huge, huge laugh. So anyway, I told my first joke and everybody laughed and she laughed, and then everybody stopped laughing and she didn't stop laughing, and she just kept laughing until everybody in the crowd was laughing at her laughing.
Wow.
And I had to address the fact that she was my mom before I could move on, because everyone was like, what the hell is going on right now? So that's why I don't invite my mom to comedy shows anymore.
Hey man, it's moms, they're just they're like that. They're showing their support. And does your mom do any comedy? Does she write any comedy or anything like that?
You know, she's actually asked if she can come out and do a set, and we're all like, no, we're good. But no, she's got a great sense of humor for sure. Yeah.
Right on. Aaron, where can we find you online? Where can people find you online, follow you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I actually don't have a lot of like formal pages or whatever, but Instagram, it's Aaron Hill 13. My Facebook is just my personal Facebook. It's not a comedy Facebook or whatever, but I'm Aaron Hill on there. And then my YouTube, I would promote my YouTube more than anything. Aaron Hill, I don't know the address. Maybe we could post a link after or whatever, but I got to really work on that self-promotion side of the game. But yeah, I check on my YouTube. I've got some videos for some musical comedy songs up there that I think are actually pretty good. And I've got a few little web series, these kind of things. So I'd say check out my YouTube for sure. But my Bandcamp too. You can get my album, my 2-song album called Are You Ready to Rock, Paper, Scissors? So yeah, maybe we can just post a bunch of links after. Yeah.
Sounds good, man. Thank you very much for your time. And hopefully once this, pandemic, whatever is over, I can come see you at a live show.
That'd be wonderful, man. Thank you so much for having me, Garmamie. This was awesome. And yeah, hope to see y'all in a comedy club real soon.